Don't expect Xi Jinping to have a change of heart. I don't know who needs to hear this, but he's not changing. They say that actions speak louder than words. Well, Xi Jinping is doing the exact thing that we're talking about here. Whatever he's promising us, whatever he's promising to the US and other countries, his actions are different. Basically, I'll tell you this, he's not trying to improve the relationship with the United States. He's not trying to improve the relationship with the West. Nor does he want to stop his ambitious goals of taking Taiwan or to bring about changes and chaos within the region around China. Whether that's supporting Russia, helping Iran, or supporting North Korea, whichever way around, this is not changing. Now, clearly, we have some very wishful thinking fellows in the West who believes that China potentially could still change its heart. Under Xi Jinping, that is. Of course, let me just say again, it's not going to happen. What Xi Jinping is doing right now is buying time because he's not in a good spot. In the Wall Street Journal report, it says that Xi Jinping does not want to admit that it is in a competition with the United States. It wants to call it a partnership or a cooperation instead. The excuse they say is that, well, Xi Jinping says if two countries as large as China and the United States go head to head, and basically that's going to cause a lot of trouble. Instead, we should form what's called a win-win scenario. For China, that's basically the CCP saying we can win twice. Now, on the other hand, the Biden administration actually views this US-China relationship as one of competition, a fair race. Now, I have a fair bit of criticism about that particular thinking as well, because that's really not what China's about. Since China's actually already at the level of confrontation, it's just they're not saying it verbally. Now, also in the Wall Street Journal is actually another article saying that Xi Jinping and the CCP is preparing for a potential Trump return. Now, that's in the article, it concludes that a much worse scenario than one of the Biden administration, because clearly that's going to be another round of the tariff war, etc. like that, like the trade war. So that's going to be even worse. But still, this tells us that Xi Jinping right now is still trying to formulate a plan where they need to drag things out. He's done this with Trump already, and he's doing it with Biden again. Even if Biden or Trump wins in 2024, it's still going to be the exact same play. And of course, the CCP does not want to admit the fact that it is in a competition against the US, because when it does admit to that, it means that it must be a fair competitiveness, right? You cannot do things as China is doing now, with its malpractice in trade, exports, and stealing other people's trade secrets, particularly with high technology. You can't do any of those things in a fair match. So they resort to not saying we're in one in the first place. But at the same time, they're also secretly doing things of the confrontation. They clearly want, and they see the US as an adversary. They clearly have a military objective over Taiwan. So all these things have already leveled it above a competition. But they're not trying to be caged in on this because, they don't really follow the rules. They're a bunch of bandits. Now, before we get to the actual reasons, here's a sponsor segment from Puritang.
If there is one supplement you want to get incorporated into your diet, it's a good omega-3 supplement. It's the best all-around defender for your health. It reduces inflammation, cholesterol, improves eyesight, and reduces risk for heart problems, as well as helps with joint pain, among other benefits. Today, I want to introduce you to Puritang's green vegetables. Puritang gets their ingredients straight from the high mountains of South Korea, and the omega oils are extracted from purslane and perilla seeds. It's 100% vegan. Now, personally, I've been using Omega for about 9 years, close to 10 years now. I've recently switched to Puritang for about a few weeks now. Here's why. We mostly get our Omegas from fish, right? But that's not the best case for everyone, especially there's the aftertaste. It might not be suitable for vegetarians or vegan. So the most important part, right, we often forget is the actual concentration for Omegas. Puritang soft gels have a much higher content for omega-3, 6, 7, and 9 than many of the brands out there. And some say that they notice there's less hair loss, more energy, lower cholesterol levels, and overall improved health. I think the best part for me is the lack of inflammation or the reduction of inflammation. Other brands also use this high heat method to extract the oil, which in turn creates a lot of harmful byproducts. Puritang's green vegetable is done using a patented method of supercritical carbon dioxide low temperature extraction, so it preserves the natural properties and maintains high purities. First of its kind. So get it for yourself or as a gift to your loved ones ahead of the holiday season. Use my code DZ2023 and you can receive free shipping globally. Check out my link in the description and comment today.
And for Mother's Day, if you spend $500 or more, you'll receive a black ginseng root as a gift as part of your purchase. So check out the link in the description and get your product today. Now, the first reason is very simple. The CCP wants to continue to take advantage of the United States as it had done for the past 30, 40 years. When you clearly state the fact that you're competing against someone, all restrictions will be let loose, and you basically will have no bounds, which means the US can actually start to compete against its adversary. When you clearly state that you are competing against someone, it means that you both will use your maximum effort to try to win. They're not going to let you take advantage of them anymore. Now, in fact, Xi Jinping has tried to do this in 2021. Remember when the two sides met in Anchorage, Alaska, for their very first meeting between the incoming Biden administration and Xi Jinping? It was then that the Chinese officials actually blatantly bashed and criticized the United States. That was Jake Sullivan and Tony Blinken about the way that the US is doing things. And since then, until maybe last year, they were in sort of a mini competition. And the end result of that is Xi Jinping actually lost the skirmish. He's lost things on semiconductor. His economy has not improved at all. And now the only option that he has left is to export EVs because foreign investment is all leaving China. And so after that little skirmish, Xi Jinping realized that he's still in no position to usurp the throne. And things are looking more bleak than ever before. They're being isolated on the international stage as they become increasingly aggressive over the South China Sea, particularly against the Philippines, incoming the invasion against Taiwan. So more countries are moving away from China in fear that they're going to be on the losing side because it doesn't look like China is winning after all. And when it comes to the tech race, there's the export of EVs, but the EU is worried that it's actually trying to flood the market with cheap EVs to drive out its own companies in the European market. And so it's looking into adding on tariffs. With Russia, there's potential sanctions coming. So it seems like it bit off more than it could chew when it decided that, well, now it's the time to go up against the United States. So Xi Jinping now wants to step back. He wants to put on a camouflage once more to mask his intention for the Chinese Communist Party, which is out to basically destroy the rest of the world and one way or another. But because they did it in such a bad timing, it's like, when you put your claws out or your fangs out, right? People can see that you're actually a vicious beast. And then after that, you're trying to retract those fangs and claws and then pretend to be a kitten. Nobody's going to believe you. You've already shown your true colors. And so that's exactly what's happening now is like you can no longer go back to the good old days of pretending to be a panda when in reality, you're a bad, evil dragon. Now, the second reason is, of course, it needs to drag out the duration or to increase the amount of time that it has so it can recover the economy. And this, again, is part of the preparation over the invasion of Taiwan, but also just in part, Xi Jinping really faces a lot of difficulties with the domestic economy, and it's not looking to improve. Ever since the exit of zero COVID at the beginning of 2023, the Chinese economy has only gotten worse. Like I said, Wall Street has lost confidence in China since then, which means that many governments are also looking at what's happening on the financial side of things, on the geopolitical side of things, and they're really trying to distance themselves or finding alternative options in Vietnam, India, or Indonesia for things like manufacturing. Especially with COVID, we saw how that really was impactful, that China had everything, right? If you didn't get the supply for something, well, you had to go beg China for more, and that was really bad. So relocation of supply chains, the concentration of technology within the spheres of your allies. So you're creating these and also again, with geopolitical side of things, the tension in the South China Sea, it's drawing a lot of little camps, right? You're forming all sorts of little alliances in the region of Indo-Pacific, that is. And so all of these things are looking like it's against the CCP's agenda. For this particular buying time reason is that of the Russian-Ukraine war. Xi Jinping is directly supporting Putin in the Russian-Ukraine conflict in hoping that later on Russia would also be a reliable partner for Xi Jinping to, whether that's with Taiwan or with any other sort of international objectives that they want to achieve. And Russia, honestly, is the only country in that little axis of evil that has somewhat of an impact. Now, of course, for the Biden administration, their red line drawn to Xi Jinping since the invasion was that China would not support Russia with military equipment or arms. But China has broken that promise. So now the ball is in Biden's court to provide those sanctions appropriately for Chinese companies and banks that have provided those support for Russia. Now, there's always the question about sanctions because will it be 100% effective? Well, no, because we've seen that Russia even has been able to evade some parts of that. So China has made systematic steps to ensure that its banks are shielded through secondary shell banks that are actually going to get sanctioned. And so in turn, they can still sort of go underground and move the funds different ways. And saying all of this, I'm just trying to highlight the concept that Xi Jinping is not going to stop supporting Putin, nor is Putin going to try to ask for help from Xi, because Xi Jinping's lifeline in terms of the international area is on Putin. And so those two are really tightly linked together. And it's also not going to stop supporting adversaries like Iran or North Korea, because these are the actual only perhaps countries that are willing to work with China and be in that, the geopolitical order, which is the axis of evil. So with a problematic economy, with the troubles, you're supporting Russia in the invasion. It's looking like you're isolated internationally, right? And everybody knows this. So what it's trying to do is basically drag on longer time before it receives those harsh punches from the Biden administration or, any other country or even, Trump down the line. But right now, I think what this basically is the third reason, the focus on Europe, right? So when you look at US and China and this competition, or at least when they try to admit it, it's a competition, but it's really a confrontation. There's really no middle ground here. There's no third party that can kind of stand as a independent or neutral, so to speak, side, because this is a zero-sum game, which means that only one side can win. Much like the last Cold War, you're either with the Soviet Union or against the Soviet Union. And this is really the problem here, because Xi Jinping is trying really hard to put Europe as a third sort of party. And it wants to win over Europe. It wants to move Europe away from the United States. And Xi Jinping is set to visit Europe in the coming days. As Xi Jinping tries to slow down to buy himself time, he's also trying to go around the world to find those countries that are willing to align with China. It's getting less and less, right? The Philippines, prime example of this, used to be a very close economic partner of China. And then since the aggression over the South China Sea, it has pushed the Philippines clearly to the other side, to the United States. And you have other countries who are still on that sort of in between. And so it could be one thing that triggers it and then just completely pushes them over. Because right now, China has not shown its full aggression, right, with the invasion of Taiwan. It still has some time to try to fool people, different countries, into thinking that China is still someone that they can work with. And so in fear that turning the entire world against it, much like what happened with the Soviet Union, it needs to appear relatively peaceful at the moment. Now, with all this being said, to conclude, Xi Jinping, even though he doesn't admit to it, I think everybody knows within their hearts that this is a competition at the least. And the reality is the United States has done more actions than what they're basically talking about. For example, the recent bill to divest TikTok is a huge blow to the CCP. It's one of its psychological, its cognitive warfare weapons that it's losing. And another aspect, there's the potential sanctions with Russia, with coming with the invasion of Ukraine. That's also another big one as well. And you got to remember this, right? The US and China started out as adversaries. It wasn't until the CCP tried to reach out in the 70s that it really turned the relationship around. So this relationship between the US and China never started out as one of peace. And now the US will no longer view this relationship as anything but competitive until there is a regime change or the CCP collapses. And realistically speaking, if you look at any of the promise that Xi Jinping has made, whether that's with fentanyl, that they're going to look into it, none of it has been done. Climate change, nothing has been done about that. Whether that's the promise that China is not supporting Russia with arms, that's also a failed promise. Or that, the US says, don't be aggressive in the South China Sea or in the Taiwan Strait. China hasn't listened. So fundamentally, Xi Jinping's going to continue what he does until the day that it really can't do it anymore. That is, the CCP no longer exists. So until then, expect Xi Jinping to continue down this path, and he's not going to look back and change. They're simply trying to stall. All right, that's it today for the episode on how China and Xi Jinping and the CCP in general are going to continue down this path, and we shouldn't expect them to change in the near future. If you enjoy the content, leave a like, comment below your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, bye-bye.